Welcome to mission number 4, Materializing. In this mission, we are going to be applying materials to a variety of objects. Materials are things like colors, textures, bumps, maps, and a variety of images that you can place onto a 3D mesh. In this mission, we are going to be using a node system to bring colors and textures to your objects. So if you scroll down, there is task 1. You're going to download a zip file. And what a zip file is, a single file that has multiple files in it. Your computer, regardless if you're using a Mac, a PC, or a Linux computer, will be able to unzip this file. So let's click on download here. Click here to download. And it's going to open up a piece of my Google Drive. To download this folder, you'll need to go to Mission 4, Materializing. Find the upside down arrow here. Click on that so that there's a menu that pops up. And then press Download. So let it prepare to download. And let's download it to our desktop or your documents folder. Right here, there's a lot of different characters here. Let's just delete those extra characters and let's just make sure that it's just mission 4, Materializing. Press download. Alright, so the zip file is now downloaded onto my desktop. Let me exit out of Chrome or minimize Chrome. And mission 4 is right here. To unzip this folder, you'll need to open up mission 4 Materializing. And there's going to be another folder within the zip folder. I'm going to drag this folder out onto the desktop or your documents folder, wherever you saved your zip file, and place it on the desktop or your documents folder. And right now we have two different types of folders. We have one with a zipper icon and one with a blender icon here. I'm not sure how your other systems are going to look like, whether it's going to look like a Mac or a Linux system, but it's going to be applying the same thing, that one will have a zipper and the other one won't. Delete the one with the zipper because you will not be able to modify anything in there unless that's out of the zipper. Now you have mission 4 Materializing on your desktop. Let's open up that folder. And mission 4 Materializing is in there. You will also see another folder called Textures. If you open up that folder, you'll see two types of textures, crystal and fire texture, which is something that we will use in this scene. Let's open up mission 4 Materializing. So, in this three-dimensional scene, the goal here is to make sure that every single one of these objects has a color or a texture or any type of material. To apply a material, first you'll need to select the image or the three-dimensional mesh. Okay, the next step, and this part will take a little time, is we're going to create another view, another viewport. You're going to drag your cursor to the bottom right hand corner of your viewport, and as you see, your cursor will turn from an arrow to a crosshair. And once it turns to a crosshair, you're going to click and drag in an upward or leftward direction. So right now I'm just going to click in an upward direction, and we will see another viewport. This is very advantageous of Blender because we can customize how we want our interface to look like so that we work in the most efficient manner. The top viewport we are just going to dedicate for you all to view how the scene is going to look like. You can also adjust this viewport by going to the border between these two viewports. moving the arrow cursor to that area where both viewports intersect, and it turns into a double-headed arrow. And you can resize the viewport to your liking. Now, if you don't like the viewport right here and you want to modify the viewport so it looks like you have two viewports standing side by side instead of vertically like this, well, you can go to that intersection, right click on that intersection, and let's join the areas so that this top area will join with the bottom area. And as you see, if I drag down, there's an arrow pointing downwards, meaning the top part will join the bottom area. So let me left click here, and now they join. And I can always modify the viewport so that if I go down, find that crosshair, I can now click and drag in the leftward direction, and here's another viewport. Alright, either ways, you have two viewports here that will do two different things eventually. Right now, they're both in the same scene or the same viewport, they're both user perspectives, they will do the same thing. Whatever changes you make here will modify on the other side. Let's focus our attention on this viewport here. We are going to go to this mode, this editor type, and realize Blender has many different types of editors. These are all the editors that Blender has, and more, which makes Blender very unique to use. But for this purpose, we're going to go to the shader editor. There's an active tool area right here. I'm going to shrink this a little bit so that we have this grid area accessible. I could zoom in and zoom out using my scroll button. Okay, so right here on the top, a couple things with menus here. Because we don't see the whole menu, your question is, how do I access the whole menu? If you place your cursor on the top and use your scroll button, we can scroll the menu as well. Same thing on the other side, scroll the menu on the other side. Alright, so I'm using my middle scroll button and I'm scrolling in the upward or downward direction as a way of navigating the menus. Alright, now I'm going to select an object on this scene. Let's select the torus. And I'm going to apply a certain color to this torus. So I'm going to press new. And what I see here are two objects here, or two nodes. One node says Principal BSDF, and another node says Material Output. What do these two things do? Principal BSDF is a default node that comes up to give an object a basic color or a base color with other properties that you'll get to explore as we go along. In other words, we can select the base color, and we see a color palette here, and we can select the color that we want. So let's say I want to select a red color. Right now, that red color is not showing up around the torus because Blender has, again, more modes. If we see this area here where it has 4 circles, we have a wireframe view or wire view. We have a solid mode, which we are currently in. This is wire, and what we see here are all the wires that make the mesh up. We have a solid view, which shows us what the solid object looks like. And when we get to the last 2 buttons, we have a material preview mode. So we preview the material, and there we will see the color of, or the texture of whatever we assigned this object to be. There's also another node called render preview, so that you can see what happens if you apply lighting, volumetric effects, or particle effects to your Blender scene. Okay, but that will be a little slower depending on the type of computer you have, because it uses a lot of processing power to calculate all of those features into your scene. Okay, so for the purpose of this, we'll be using the material preview mode so that at least we know the material exists. Realize if we go to the base color on the shader editor, we can always change the color anytime we want to. Okay, next step, let's make sure we name the color, and we'll call this it looks like a purple, so I'll type in purple. Always name your materials, because in case you do reuse material, it's there. Alright, so we got the purple for the color for the torus. Let's do another thing with these cones here. Alright, so very similarly, I'm going to select the object. I'm going to press new. And by default, it's going to give us the principal BSDF and material output. The material output is needed. It's necessary because without the output, if I were to delete that, okay, there will be a pink color, which means there's no materials attached to this node. In case you accidentally deleted the output node, go to add, go to output, and click on material output, and make sure BSDF, this little connector button, connects to the surface. Okay, and that will default back to that. In this next part, we are going to be applying an image to this cone. So right here, I'm going to delete the principal BSDF, and I'm going to explore a different type of node. There are different types of nodes here: shader node, texture node, color node, and more. We can mix shaders. We can mix these nodes up. That's something we'll do in an advanced stage. But let's go to texture, and let's go to image, texture. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be applying an image to these objects here, to these cones. Very similarly, I'm going to attach the color node to the material output by way of the surface. It's black right now, which means currently there are no nodes attached. There's a node attached to the material output node, but there are no images attached to the image texture. So we're going to open up an image, and in your Mission 4 Materializing folder, you should have a textures folder. Let's open up that textures folder, and we have two images. We have crystal and we have fire texture, and we're going to dedicate these cones so that they're all fire textures. Click on the fire texture and open the image, and what you see here is the fire texture wrapped around the cone. Pretty cool. But here's the thing, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cones. So how are we going to texture all these cones in the most efficient way without doing this all the time? Well, before we move on, let's make sure we name the material first. We'll call the material fire. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna select another cone. The great thing about texturing in Blender is that we can reuse the textures again and again. Again, making sure that you name the textures so you know what those textures are. If you go to the area next to new, there is a circle right here, and this is the list of all the textures and materials that you have made. So I can click on fire, and the fire texture will apply to another cone. I could do the same thing to the next cone and the other subsequent cones. This makes your job way easier. Let's do the same thing with the middle cone right here, a middle cube. Okay, and we're going to apply another type of texture to this. Again, deleting principal BSDF, and we're going to do something a little advanced right here. So we're going to be using something called mix shaders. Okay, I'm going to connect the shader node to the surface. Realize anything to the left or right are going to be connected to the next node. So this is called your output node, and everything here is on the left side is called your input node. Everything inputted through this node, anything outputted to the next node. The mix shader allows us to mix different shaders at the same time. So right now we're going to connect two shaders together. We're going to add, go to texture, and let's apply another image texture. Let me zoom out. Let me move these nodes around, which you can do. And I'm going to attach this color node to the first shader right here. Alright, nothing happened yet. So I'm going to press open. I'm going to open that textures folder and open up crystal. And right away we should see the crystal texture right here. Okay. We're going to add another text. We're going to add another node to this, to the other shader node. Let's add, and let's experiment right here. Let's go to shader right here. And let's go to, for instance, let's say glass. I'm not sure what this will do, but let's experiment. And a lot of this stuff is all about experimenting what you can mix and what it will do. And what you see here is it looked like it made this shade, makes this shade or this texture a little lighter from this darker color to this lighter color. It looks like we could change how this glass is going to look like. So here, the beauty behind this is we can further modify how this looks like. It's glass, but it doesn't look like glass to me. Let's see if we change a couple things here. Okay, we can emphasize color a bit more through the roughness. And I'm not sure what this IOR does. But let's look at this from another point of view. Let's click on render view. Nothing happened, but what we see here is some areas are colored and some areas are slightly colored. And that all is due to the lighting of your scene. So if I move the lighting around, the color also shifts. It's a very minor feature of mixing nodes together, is that we get to see more different types of materials being made. So that's something for you to explore, is learning how to mix these shades. Let's do another one. Go add shader or color. Okay, we can adjust the brightness of the current crystal shader, and we can connect the color to the shader. Alright, looks like it gets lighter, gets darker, and we can also do the same exact thing. So again, explore a combination of different shaders and see what you can get. You might do something accidentally and you might like it. Alright, for now we are done with this Blender file. Let's go to File and let's go to Save. Alright, a couple things about saving your file and constructing another scene with a whole bunch of these textures. The problem about these textures is that this Blender file is pointing to another file. Okay, so I'm going to save this file so I could demonstrate a couple things, and I'm going to close this Blender file here. Okay, so there's going to be a time where you will have a whole bunch of textures on your computer, scattered around your computer. Now what happens if you moved for instance the crystal and fire texture outside of the texture folder? If I reopen up the Blender file and I go to the material preview mode, you will see that these cones and this cube turns pink. And it turns pink because what it says is it's missing the textures that you place in the textures folder, those pictures, those images. Okay, and so what that lets you know is that you'll need to organize your folders so that all your textures are in one spot. And if they're not in one spot and you move them around and they're scattered, you are going to come up with this dilemma where you'll have to find those textures on your computer, place them in the folder, and repoint them to the right area. So, all in all, make sure you organize all of your textures in one folder with your Blender file and call that folder textures. I'm gonna move this Blender file back, move these textures back in, but I'm gonna close this Blender file and not save. Let's move the crystal back into the textures folder and the fire texture as well. And let's reopen it and see if it works again. Voila, it works again, so it's pointing in the right direction. Alright, after you save, really importantly, you want to go to File as well. Not only save, but go to External Data. And there's an area that provides you a little backup just in case you misplaced all your textures file. There's an area here that says automatically pack into .blend. Or, yeah, click on that. And so on the bottom it will say pack 2 files up. Those 2 files are your fire texture and your crystal texture. And what packing into blend does is it packs all of those images into one file, your Blender file. Okay, just in case you misplace those images around your computer, it will combine all of those images, all of those textures into your Blender file without you worrying about where you saved those images, just in case you move them around. Make sure you press save and watch what happens here. And I'm going to I'm going to close my Blender file. Understand your Blender file got a little bigger. It went from like 56K to 1 megabyte because it combined the other images into this one Blender file. So if I move these 2 images outside of the folder, assuming that Blender is going to be looking for them, but once you have packed them into that one Blender file, the images still stay there. Okay, so I recommend that even after you save, go to external data, automatically pack into blend. Okay, and that is, my friend, how you add materials to these 3-dimensional objects.